everyone. I have the great pleasure to introduce you to Pete Warnock of Naturally Ecstatic. Now, just under a month ago, I had the pleasure of attending one of Pete's breathwork retreats, and it was an event which is the one that stands out above and beyond everything I've done this year in terms of, okay, this is having a radical impact on my life. I'm realizing that this is going to change the way I approach so many things about life. Now, I've been a very keen breath worker for a long time, since I did my health counselor's course way back in the 1970s, and I've had a lot of other experiences of working with breath with different people, and it's all been really helpful and useful. And yet I've walked into that space, and within a short space of time I've realised that actually, like a lot of people, I'd learned a lot of erroneous things about breath, which was really hampering me, making my life much more difficult than it needed to be. And it was such a relief, because I realised almost straight away, within minutes, that here is someone who knows breath. He is breath, and if there's anything that I don't understand, he's going to have the answers. So you can imagine what delightful that was. But the other thing that was actually even more delightful is that it wasn't simply 2 days working with the breath, it was 2 days working with the breath and also incorporating ecstatic dance. So the whole idea of being ecstatic was very much part of the process, and indeed the way that we recognise Pete is the term naturally ecstatic, and you'll see the details for the website on the description. So thank you very much for that experience, Pete, and I am still having the revelations and the insights, and I'm still digesting. So to just make it really clear for the viewers, my biggest mistake I'd made in my entire breathwork life is I thought that you were supposed to breathe entirely through the nose, and that mouth breathing was somehow not appropriate. Well, that one got shut down in flames really quickly, and since the experience I've incorporated mouth breathing into my life, and that's made such a difference. And I'll be very, very honest, I did something really ridiculously foolish, which is I attempted to go running, breathing through the nose. What a ridiculous thing to do. I really understand one of the points you made in your experience with us, is that that's one of the aspects about human beings. We can be ridiculous. That's where I really was being ridiculous, because of course breathing entirely through the nose and running, I ended up in a bit of a ridiculous situation. So without further ado, thank you so much, Pete, and what would you like to say to start us off on this interview, please?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say hello. You know, I mean, it's a real honour to be here. It was really lovely having you on the retreat, and you obviously sharing your wisdom, which was always wonderful. You have so many pearls of wisdom that you drop in, and I always think a workshop or a retreat is an accumulation of everybody. You know, we have a huge wealth of experience in the room. And when people come together and share in this way, we all learn and grow with each other, you know, and from each other. So, yeah.
So true, so true. In fact, I remember the people on the experience speaking about the fact that they felt very much included. They felt that they were able to contribute. And they said in a lot of events it's all about the one person, but it really wasn't like that with you. So that was very much valued by a number of people on that trip.
Great, thank you. I will just respond to your breathing when running.
Yes.
Breathing when running is, or breathing in exercise, nose breathing is actually preferable within exercise. Most people find it takes a lot of building up to do. So often we do overbreathe, and we often puff out a lot of our CO2 when we're actually in exercise. But actually, when we can learn to condition ourselves to nose breathe, and it does take time, then that actually is better for the body on the long term. But what it does is initially it builds up this we get into a state of air hunger. We kind of get into a state where we're feeling like, oh my God, I haven't got enough breath here at all, you know. And so what I would suggest is modulating your exercise to have some nose breathing and then some mouth breathing and then some nose breathing and some mouth breathing. And I walk up the Glastonbury Tor nearly every morning. And when I first started to nose breathe to go up and down the Tor, I found it really, really impossible to actually go all the way up and all the way down purely nose breathing. And I built up over time. And the way in which I actually have built up my tolerance to CO2 levels, which is really necessary, which maybe we can go into later on, is whenever I'm walking, whenever I'm doing any exercise, at times, so I will breathe through my nose, and then at times I will just hold my breath and I will relax into the sensations of air hunger. And when you hold your breath, you have much more CO2 being released and no oxygen coming in. And so you can acclimatize, and then you take some more big breaths. If you feel like you really deeply need much more breath in, then have a few mouth breaths. You know, we're not here to beat ourselves up. We're here to acclimatize into a better way of breathing, and eventually we will incrementally bring up our CO2 tolerance, so that then we can actually be nose breathing in really quite extensive exercise. So, and that is actually, science is showing that in exercise, nose breathing is the best way. But that is not saying that nose breathing is the only breathing that we need to do at all, because mouth breathing is king for so many things, especially meeting emotions and really being embodied, deeply embodied.
I'm so grateful you brought us to that point, yes, because that was the next thing I was going to say. My big learning experiences, because I've been so focusing on the nose breathing, it was all about control, and it was all about reducing my emotional range. And what I learned from you is that the mouth breathing enables us to open up the emotional range to be fully alive. And this brings us to the second of your words, the word ecstatic.
Yeah. I mean, my company is naturally ecstatic, and I was on an ecstatic dance retreat. I've gone on ecstatic dance retreats around the world for years and years, and I absolutely adore ecstatic dance. And I play with breath in my ecstatic dance to take me to an ecstatic place. Before when I used to dance, I would be quite in my head, and I would be quite nervous about how I was moving and what people were perceiving of me. And then I discovered breathing in my dance, you know, which is crazy, because I'd been consciously breathing for a long time, but I'd never actually taken it into my dance. And as soon as I took it into my dance, everything changed, and I realized that I can just take myself to ecstatic places inside with my breath. And actually, I use this in everyday life, you know. Breath can access all sorts of incredible states, and we are all naturally ecstatic just beneath the busyness, you know. We often live with so much busyness going on that we're up here, and we live in a low-level kind of adrenalized state most of the time. But just beneath that adrenalized state is pure ecstasy, is pure bliss, is pure peace, you know. It's not kind of big fast ecstasy, it's a kind of it's this kind of continuous present sense of just beingness, and everybody is this just beneath the busyness.
You've given the game away with your body gestures, because you're showing how it's fundamentally opening.
Yeah.
So I guess this is my cue to ask you the first of the very specific questions, which is that for people who are new to breathwork, and for a lot of people, you breathe, you wake up, you breathe, you're born, you breathe. Why have any conscious control? Why not just let nature take its course? Why breathwork in the first place, really?
Yeah, well, there is a what and there is a why there. First of all, what actually is breathwork? You know, because breathwork covers a whole host of everything to do with breathing. And most people who've experienced some breathwork perceive that particular thing that they're doing encompasses breathwork, you know. And breathwork encompasses so much. Breathwork encompasses the function of breathing, the how we breathe, the where we breathe, the why we breathe. It also encompasses using different kinds of breathing, different styles of breathing for accessing different things. And there are lots of different styles of breathing that will bring about different changes in the body in different states. So first of all, we're looking at what the breath work is, and then we go back to your question. And just remind me of your question again, because my head's like a leaky teapot sometimes.
Fine. So everybody breathes.
Yeah.
So
okay.
What's the point of going to all this trouble that we're already into? Why?
Okay. So why? Yes. When we're born, we take our first breath. Up until then, we weren't breathing. You know, we're born, and suddenly breath comes in. And for many people, being born is actually quite traumatic. You know, so our breathing, when any stress happens in the body, when any stressor happens on us, and stress hormones are released, the first thing that is affected is our breathing. And often, if we live in a world or in an environment where there is a lot of stress, where we're not innately safe, where we don't innately feel safe, then our breathing is going to be compromised. We're going to be breathing a little bit more shallowly. I mean, we all have different responses to stress. There is fight, there is flight, there is freeze, there is faint, there is shrink away. There's all sorts of different things. And depending on what our predominant reactions and responses to stress are, depends on what happens with our breathing. You know, when a big bang goes off or when something happens, that's what we do. You know, our breathing is affected. And then if we live in a state of semi-stress, and as I said earlier on, we live in pretty much semi-adrenalized states most of the time. And if we do this, then our breathing is compromised most of the time. So we habitualize really poor breathing. And depending on what stressors come, our breathing changes. And that's what we have habitualized. And so most people have habitualized not a full deep breath, but quite a shallow breath. Most people aren't really fully out in the world and shining, you know. Most people are slightly guarded and slightly holding themselves back a little bit, slightly nervous, or whatever that is. We've all got our own psychological makeup, which has been created by the experiences that we've had in our life and the way in which we've responded to them. And this has all affected our breathing, and it's all affected the way in which we've controlled ourselves. You know, and breathing is an amazing way to control ourselves. Yeah.
This is revolutionary. I really get that from what you're saying. It is a revolutionary act to be able to start to work in a conscious way with breath. So I did take detailed notes on the 2 days that I spent with you doing breath work. And there was a total of 25 individual practices which you took us through, which amazed me when I thought about it. 25 completely different practices that we actually did. That was really extraordinary. So let's make it simple for people for whom this is all a new idea. What are the main benefits that we can consider from this practice?
Okay. First of all, breath changes your state. And we are beings that live through all sorts of different states. We go through emotional states, we go through mental states, we have energetic states. And when we are at the whim of the universe and we haven't cultivated a way of being in our center and dropping into a state of peace, or a state of being energized, or a state of being ecstatic. When we're at the whim of the universe, we're just being pushed and pulled. We're like a leaf in the breeze. We're just being blown around. But when we can actually start to consciously create states in ourselves, when we can consciously start to bring more resilience within us, and by practicing breathing techniques and styles, then we actually start to build a deep state of resilience, so that when things happen to us within our life, we get less pushed and pulled around because we already know we've built neural pathways to being able to completely relax. So when stress happens, and one of the wonderful things about when we spoke about earlier on about bringing up your CO2 tolerance, CO2 is a stressor in the body. You know, it is incredibly necessary, but when there's a lot of it, we go into a kind of a fight or flight state, and within that there is an element of stress. Now, if we know that we're not in any danger at all, and we can just relax into that, the more we relax into it, the more our sphere of ability to deal with stress starts to grow. And the more that grows, the more stress that happens to us, the more chilled out we can be. So when things happen to us, we're not affected in this big fight or flight response to anywhere near the same degree as we would have done if we hadn't had a breathing practice that starts to build resilience. Yeah.
No, I'm really getting that. That makes so much sense. And to me, that word relax is a core word. And just so people know, CO2 relates to carbon dioxide, so this is the gas that we breathe out. And I was taught completely erroneously that this is simply a waste product, and it's so much more. It's the golden gas, and we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. But before we do that, this is what I want to add as a question. We have the idea of conscious breath work. Yes. How often would be appropriate to be doing conscious breath work? Is this a once a day for 10 minutes? What's the best approach, do you reckon, for this?
I think it all depends on the individual. I think it really, really does, as to what capacity they have, what they can fit into their life that's not going to stress them, because we don't want to bring something that's going to stress you into your life, even if it's going to teach you how to de-stress, you know. So a little and often is much, much better than having to kind of dedicate to a 40-minute breath practice every day. And again, it all depends on what the breathing practice is. There are, I mean, in my Bulletproof breathwork training, I have got 50 different breathwork techniques that I teach that all start to retrain and retrain the way in which we breathe, the way in which we meet life, the way in which we meet sensation in our body, because it's not only about breathing, it's also about what our intent is, where we put our mind, how we receive the breath, how we receive the sensations in our body. So it's a whole kind of a whole chunk of work that we need to do all together, rather than just refining a particular breathing practice, you know. But how much a day? Well, I would say at least 5 minutes in the morning and at least 5 minutes at night. And it depends on what you're trying to achieve. You know, if you're trying to achieve deep peace, then really long, slow, rhythmic breaths is going to be your friend. If you need to energize yourself, then bigger, faster, deeper breaths is going to be your friend. And what I've found in my own practice is a lot of people get very dysregulated when, especially emotionally dysregulated when things happen. So when somebody does something that triggers us, you know, we can have a really big emotional response. And a lot of my clients have said, when I'm in a big emotional response, I've tried really slow breathing and it doesn't work, you know. So what do? And what I find, what I've discovered within my own practice, is if we meet and match the energy of the sensation in us, so the power of the feelings in us, with big fast breathing. So if we match the intensity of the sensation with the intensity of our breathing, and then slow our breathing down, then we slow our breathing down much more. Our nervous system slows down much more. So we activate ourselves, so we consciously step into that feeling, and then we consciously slow it down. And then if we do that 3 or 4 times, it's like, rather than if you have this big emotional feeling and you start doing slow breathing, it's going to slowly down, if it will even take you down at all, you know, because it all depends on what's going on in your mind as well. You might still be fighting it. But if you engage with big, fast, chunky breathing, then that will take you out of your mind, and then slow breathing, it will set off a whole set of chemicals in the body. Changing your breathing changes your state, changes your chemicals in your body. Okay? And then if you do that 3 or 4 times, big breathing, slow breathing, big breathing, slow breathing, your state will go up and then down, and then up and down, and up and down. And it will take you much, much shorter time to get to this really deep, relaxed, soft, surrendered state than if you just purely tried to meditate it away, you know. And I tried to meditate it away for years, you know.
I'm so glad you said that, because triggering is something that affects all of us, and I've had the pleasure of learning that from you, and I've had the opportunity to actually do exactly what you said, and you did do exactly as you described, and I just felt so much better, matching where I'm at, and then just gradually, that was so good. So grateful for that. So this is not exactly the same as triggering, but it's a very important area for people, which is to do with pain. So we all experience pain at different times in our life. So has breathwork got anything to add or to inform us about pain?
Yeah, I think breathwork has, for sure, and I also think my own insight into it, because when I was 5 years old, I had 2 really horrific accidents and have lived with chronic pain ever since. Now, to look at me, you wouldn't think I'm in agony. Okay, a lot of the time I'm in a lot of pain. In fact, all of the time I'm in pain, and a lot of the time I'm in very strong pain. But what I've done is I've reframed what it is. I've reframed it as strong sensation, because when we frame something as pain, we come into opposition with it straight away. You know, we want to get out of it. And it stops us being curious. And sensation is always here for us to be curious with. The way in which we can actually meet life with curiosity, it changes our relationship with it. And it's generally people's relationship with pain that needs to change. And what I've noticed in meditating with my pain and breathing with my pain is there's a kind of big sensation in my low back, for instance, a big general sensation in my back. And when I focus on it as a big general sensation, which is pain, I suffer, you know? And boy, do we have the capacity for suffering. My God. When we focus on suffering, we breathe into it, we amplify it. You know, we go into all sorts of mental and emotional stories around it, and we can amplify it. Now, if you were to put utter focus on the actual sensations that are there, let go of the idea that it is suffering, and let go of the idea that it is pain, and just be super curious with the sensations, you will notice that what you had originally called pain is made up of thousands, millions of little fluctuations of different sensations, and many of those sensations are incredibly pleasant, you know, are incredibly beautiful. And so what I do with my pain is I focus, I feel, and I welcome the actual sensations that are beautiful around it. And then that just kind of leaves me with this core thing that is much more uncomfortable. But because it's not this huge thing, it's nowhere near as big, and it doesn't distract me in the same way. It doesn't pull my attention away in the same way. And then when I'm focusing on this core piece that is really uncomfortable, I just relax with it. I don't try and change it. I just relax with it and soften with it. And everything changes. It doesn't mean I don't feel it, but my whole response to it changes. Yeah.
That's truly miraculous and magnificent. And I completely relate to everything you're saying about the reframing of the experience. That's so beautiful. I want to bring in this golden gas, this carbon dioxide. I thought it was just a waste product of no value, and then I turn up on your experience and it's now the golden gas. What is this about?
Without CO2, we would not be able to absorb any oxygen at all. Okay, so CO2 enables oxygen absorption. Okay, and actually the more CO2 we have in the system, the more oxygen we can actually start to absorb. So there are lots of practices that people are doing, and a lot of them are nose breathing practices, but there are a lot of practices that people are doing which are increasing our availability and our tolerance to what is seen as air hunger. Now, if you were to just hold your breath and hold your breath and hold your breath, it would feel like in quite a short time you would need to breathe, and you would think that you're running out of breath. Well, we call it running out of breath, you know, we're running out of oxygen, but we're not running out of oxygen. What we're feeling is the buildup of CO2 in our body, which is telling us that we need to breathe. But if we can learn to relax with this, relax this sensation of air hunger and just welcome that, and then take a breath in, the more CO2 we have, the more oxygen we actually take in. So this is really, really key. And there's also one of the techniques that I taught on the course, which is actually my favorite breathing technique of all time. I think it's the breathing technique that everybody should have. It works really deeply with mental and emotional health, is a humming practice. And you just close your eyes and you just hum really softly and gently. And you just hum as long as you possibly can. You hum all the way out till the end of the out breath, and then you take a breath in, and then you hum again. And you just do that for 5 minutes, and you put your awareness in your body. You tune into expansiveness and spaciousness, and you feel vibration in your body. And every breath, you let the breath be a little longer, the out breath, the hum, be a little longer and a little softer. And you start to build up your CO2 tolerance. But also, when you're humming vibrates something in the sinuses which releases nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is a vasodilator, which means it opens up your vascular system, your blood system, so that, and it lets off up to 15 times more of that gas, so that then when you breathe in and you've got more CO2 in there, it's got a bigger surface area to flow through, so you absorb much more oxygen. And this is a really, really beautiful way of just regulating your nervous system. Beautiful technique. And I remember teaching this to a panel of doctors who were working in mental health. There were about 15 people teaching different techniques. We all had 5 minutes to just teach one technique to these doctors so that they could go out and teach them to their patients. And this was the one practice that they said, if we can use this, we reckon that we could take at least half of our patients off medication in a short period of time, because they've experienced so much benefit in just 5 minutes. And if you do this practice for 15 minutes, it's incredible. I mean, there are layers of the practice. There are different things to focus on, which I take people through, but it's stunning, stunning. I mean, what was your experience with that?
It was very interesting for me because I've been doing so much work with releasing traumas, and I actually had the very last trauma which I released the day before turning up to the first of the 2 days with you. And for me, the humming was deeply distressing because I'm so used to being able to make a decent exhalation, a nice long one, and it just wasn't there. My exhalation was so short, and so I just judged it as being so short and so pathetic, and what the hell is going on with me? So I went, it was a great opportunity to see how I can go into self-judgment and self-criticism, and it was very hard, but we did it more than once. And I remember the second time I experienced it, probably on the second day, I had a much better relationship with that experience, and I can see and I could sense the power of it very much so.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's my favourite practice. It puts me into such a deep state of relaxation, and yet I'm fully alert, I'm fully alive, I'm energised, and yet I'm completely zen. So.
And that's the golden ticket, really. If we can have the complete relaxation with also the alertness and mindfulness, that's what everyone wants. So what I'm hearing is that whatever it is you want in your life that you could do with changing in a beneficial way, this is a revolutionary practice. So I do have a question to ask, which is to do with the fact that you made it very clear to us on the training that you are in the spectrum of the ADHD. So
I'm neurospicy for sure.
Neurospicy for sure. So here's the question: how does breathwork help you with neurospicy ADHD? How does that work?
It helps to regulate my system, you know, because ADHD is, or in my case, it means that I'm very tangential in my thinking. So I will start thinking about something, I'll start doing something, that will remind me of something else, so I'll start doing that. That will remind me of something else, and I'll start doing that. And within 10 minutes on my computer, I've got 100 tabs open, and then I hit overwhelm, you know, and I can't do any of it. But if I consciously breathe, if I come away from my screen and just consciously breathe and regulate my nervous system, I come back into a place of balance where I can actually just meet all of this stuff and then deal with what I need to do and close what I need to close and focus again. So for me, breathwork is an amazing way of coming back into focus.
Yeah. Now you've said that, I'm very curious. Do you prefer the nose breathing or the mouth breathing for that particular function?
It all depends on what is going on in my mind. It all depends. If I'm in massive overwhelm and I really need to just change my state, I will do some big fast mouth breathing, and then I'll do some long slow, either mouth or nose breathing. You know, so I'll do this pattern that I showed you earlier on. So big fast breathing, and then long slow breathing, and then big fast breathing, long slow, and I'll do like 10 breaths of each. So 10 fast, 10 slow, 10 fast, 10 slow, 10 fast, and 10 slow. But I mean, because I've been exploring breathwork for so long. I've been exploring my breath since I was 5 after these injuries, because it affected my diaphragm, and so I had an initial experience of having to stop breathing because it was too damn painful, and I was injured in my pelvic floor, and I realised that actually when I breathed it hurt my pelvic floor, and that taught me about the relationship with my pelvic floor and my breathing diaphragm. And so that started off a curiosity with me really, really early on. And then I had a nervous breakdown in my early 20s, and I was medicated. I was pretty suicidal, or very suicidal, in fact. And a friend who saw me, and after I'd been on my medication for a few days, was just like, "Pete, what is going on with you? I literally turned into a bit of a zombie." And she said, come with me to this meditation class. And I went to a meditation class with her where they were teaching breathing and mantra work. And just in that first session, I reconnected with the breathing that I'd played with when I was younger. And suddenly it was just effortless for the stress and the anxiety to just fall away. I was lucky because I'd played with it before when I was young, you know. But I started to build a practice of breathwork every day, breathwork and meditation. And then I trained in all sorts of things, and that's taken me to where I am now, you know. And I've got so many breathing tools and techniques. And what I've made my mission in life is to share this, because it's the most simple thing in the world. We all breathe. We can change our state with our breath. And it's really, really easy when we know how. And I want to make it as accessible as possible so that everybody has these tools and can take responsibility for their own health and well-being.
Accessible as possible. I'm so glad that's a really big button pusher for me in the most helpful way, because I've got subscribers all over the world, places like Canada and all sorts of different countries in the world. And it's great for me to be able to literally drive 5 minutes and have an experience where I actually am face to face with you, the group of people. But there are so many people that's not going to be realistic for, and I'm excited to know that you have an answer to that. So anyone in the world who wants to learn these things, how are they going to be able to learn naturally ecstatic through you?
Okay, well I've kind of put everything that I've learned. I mean, I've done a lot of training over the years. I've trained in most styles of breath work. I've trained in all sorts of different yogic things, qigong. I mean, you name it. When I had such a taste and a hunger for learning and for healing, and have continued to explore that. And what I've done is I have distilled what I've learned in that time and what worked for me. I've distilled that into an online course which I call Bulletproof Breathwork. And it's sold in two different ways. It's sold as either a toolkit where you can just access the whole lot and just dip in and try it, or it's sold as a 5-month program which is drip fed, where you learn to rebuild the way in which and retrain the way in which we breathe, we think, we feel, we respond, or we react. And it teaches people how to respond rather than react. And it completely retrains how we breathe. And I'm very much a believer in there are so many breathing tools out there, and we can all benefit from all of them. And some are going to suit people, different people more than others, you know. And I know that there are some breathwork styles out there that are, this is the breathing technique that everybody needs to do, you know. We have to nose breathe. Mouth breathing is evil and is going to kill you, you know. And or I mean, say Wim Hof, you know. Wim Hof is smashing it across the world. He's got this one breathing technique, and it's amazing for some people. And for some people it really doesn't work at all. For some people it sets off their nervous system in a way that is really, really not helpful for them, you know. I'm a believer in, let's take all of these, try them all out, and I've tried them out myself, and then practice them all and see which ones work for you, you know. And then we use the ones that work, you know. We don't want to use ones that are going to stress us, because that's just going to be exacerbating the problem. So within Bulletproof Breathwork, there's a whole ton of different practices and processes which you can dip into and learn. And once you've learned them and mastered them, then you have a choice as to whether you use this one or that one. And you have a whole different style of breathing techniques to deal with different things that happen in our life, because we have a ton of different things happening. And I think we need different tools for different things.
We certainly do. And I just wanted to say that there was something that you said to do about breath and weaving. Could you remind us what that was about?
Yeah, I mean, breath is woven through everything. I mean, breath is, no matter what we're doing, we're breathing, you know. If we stop breathing, we stop living, and it doesn't take long. For most people, it's 6 or 7 minutes of stopping breathing and we die. I mean, although the world record is 26 minutes, you know, a free diver, 26 minutes of holding his breath. Absolutely incredible. But for most of us, mere mortals, you know, breath is woven through everything. And if we have a conscious awareness of our diaphragm and a conscious awareness of our breathing, the more we consciously breathe, the more that's going to affect our unconscious breathing. You know, the more we can build up patterns of and neural pathways of better breathing, then the times when we're not consciously breathing, which is probably about 96% of the time, you know, 96 to 99% of the time, we are unconsciously breathing. But if we are consciously practicing better breathing, that will have a knock-on effect into our unconscious breathing. So yeah, it's a bit like compound interest, you know. When you're doing something, when you're practicing a little bit every day, the benefits grow and grow and grow and grow, and you naturalize that, and you grow a little bit more, and you naturalize the next, and suddenly something that was really challenging to you is really suddenly easy, because actually you have got a deeper capacity for meeting the stresses of life. So
I think that's a beautiful way to end what for me is an extraordinary and life-changing interview. Thank you so much for
Thank
this.
you. Thank you.
Thanks so very much. Cheers for now.
Thank you so much.